So this session is being recorded. This is our TEAS workshop. I'm going to hand it over to Catherine.
So before we start, Kelly, do you mind sharing what program of study you're working towards?
I'm in the RX program right now, hoping to transfer into nursing. I'm an ally.
Excellent. Okay. So as part of the application process for going into nursing, any of the nursing programs, or even of the Rad Tech program, students are required to take this test. So we're going to work through a PowerPoint that explains how to get ready for that test, some of the how-tos, and also the instructions for registering for the test. So if you are starting out in your initial biology classes this semester, you are probably looking to take the TEAS next summer. And one of the best things you can do for yourself is pay a lot of attention to the coursework that you're taking right now. That coursework in English and math and the sciences, that's the coursework that will prepare students for the TEAS. So I'm going to do some screen sharing. Perhaps I'm doing some screen sharing. All right, so are you able to see that?
Looks good, Catherine.
Okay, I just want to do this as I've got some stuff in the way here that's not helping me see my slideshow. Okay, here we go, here we go. So this actual presentation is not going to talk specifically about the content of the test, though I do have some examples of that. More so, what we're focused on is understanding how to get ready for the test, time frames, the policies associated with taking the test. So I'm facilitating this, but I always let students know that I have never studied healthcare. But because I understand academic strategies, I'm actually able to pass some of the coursework, not only for this, but also for NCLEX. But it is more on my part, just understanding the strategy for how to test take. So during COVID-19 times, we have some options for how students can actually take the exam. Gardner campus is offering limited seating. So several days a week, I believe Tuesday through Thursday, students are able to go to the campus and take the exam. ATI, which proctors the exam, also offers online exams, typically on Mondays. And then students can take the exams anywhere else. There are some agencies that offer the exam. There are also other colleges that offer the exam. If you go somewhere other than Mount Wachusett or through ATI, you will pay a fee to submit the scores to Mount Wachusett. So I have provided the links for our testing services website that has more information about registering for the test, and also the ATI website where you actually do the test registration. So the outline of this is to first talk about the TEAS test itself, some of the policies, how the scoring is done. I do want to talk a little bit about reviewing and practicing. Students should plan on preparing for 6 to 8 weeks before taking the exam. And again, the primary way you should be preparing is really through the coursework that you're taking now. So whether you are in English, math, sciences, those are all the courses that will help you get through the exam, sometimes without even studying, but 6 to 8 weeks is the standard. I am going to talk about test taking strategies, particularly for multiple choice exams, and then we do have some resources to share with you. So the TEAS is actually the test of essential academic skills. It's an entry-level exam that's required of any student doing a nursing program or Rad Tech. This test is designed to test your lifelong knowledge. So again, this is important to be paying close attention in your current classes, but you are being tested on material and information that you learned in grade school. So you are going to dig deep and go back to reading, you know, when you were back in the 2nd and 3rd grade. So it is lifelong knowledge that's being tested. The registration for this exam is at ATI Testing, which is the proctor. Use Firefox as your browser if at all possible. This website does not like Internet Explorer. So when you go in through something other than Firefox, you may not see Mount Wachusett show up as one of the possible test sites. You do create an account and you do pay online directly to ATI. Currently, the fee is about $107, including the tax. If you have to retest, so in other words, if you take the test for a second time, you are paying the same $107. There are no refunds for this exam. So once you register, you have to show up. We encourage you to register at least 4 or 5 weeks in advance. That means you need to have your full game plan in play so that you're able to make it to the exam. Mount Wachusett only puts out about 4 weeks of dates and times at a time. So you're not really able to register, you know, 2 weeks or 2 months in advance. If Mount Wachusett registration is full, you may have to test at another college or online. But again, there could be an additional fee, approximately $30, to have your test scores sent to Mount Wachusett. So as much as you possibly can, take the test at the college. And if anyone has questions along the way, please stop me. So the recommendation is take the test when you've completed English 101, a math, and at least 1 lab science. Practice test taking for at least 6 to 8 weeks, if at all possible. You have to have a time frame in mind, because if you have to take this exam for a second time, the requirement is that you wait 30 days before you take the test again. So for those of you who are interested in the practical nursing program, the application date is September 1st. So the recommendation is take your first exam in June or early July at the latest. If you need a second test date, that test date should be August. For those who are in Rad Tech, your application date is December 1st. So you should be looking to test in July or August. If you need to take a second go at it, October should be your deadline. And those who are going into the RN program, your application date is January 15th. We encourage you to start in August and then do a retest in October. For the RN students, October is really the last opportunity to really get a test date. In December, quickly, and so sometimes students are competing with each other for, November and December dates. So you don't want to be left out by waiting till the last minute. At Mount Wachusett, students are allowed 3 takes at this. So you can take the test 3 times within a calendar year. So if you start July 11th, 2020, and then you took a second test on August 18, 2020, and then your third attempt was in October 2020, that uses up your 3 attempts within the calendar year. So that means you cannot test again until October of 2021. So you do want to make sure that you are spacing out your exam and the number of attempts, or to give yourself a number of attempts by scheduling accordingly. So don't wait till the last minute. It never has worked out for students who have done so. There are 4 subject areas: reading, math, science, English, and language. And at this point, I would ask, are there any guesses as to which sections students have to retake? Students typically pass 2 of the sections and don't pass the other 2. Anyone want to guess on what the sections are that are passed versus those that are not passed on the first attempt?
Maybe reading, English, and language usage is passed. And then math and science, maybe not so much.
Okay, one would think. What happens is students are so worried about math and science that they spend more time studying the math and science. And then they ignore reading and English and language. And why would students do that? Well, we read every day. We use English and language every day. So how hard can that be? Well, actually, those are the sections students don't pass because they haven't spent any time doing review. So you really have to review all of the subject matter and not just be afraid of the math and science of the 2. So it's always interesting when students come in and say, I got to retake the TEAS because I didn't pass reading. Again, reading is probably one of those subjects that you spent time on in grade school, but no one has asked you to really pay attention to those kinds of that kind of content since you've been, in college or in high school.
Catherine, we actually have a question. How many
Oh, good.
times can we do a retest in English and reading?
Okay, so it's still the same number of times. So even when you do a retest, that retest counts no matter how many subject areas you retest in. Now, the interesting thing is when you do a retest, you don't have to worry about the 2 sections or the sections that you passed. You only have to focus on the sections you didn't pass. However, you're still going to pay for the whole exam, and you still have to sit through the entire exam. So when you are applying for your program, the goal is to look at your highest scores, no matter what attempts the scores come from. The admissions committee will take the highest scores from each attempt. But you do pay for the entire exam again, and it is 3 times. So a retake for reading, that's a second attempt. If you have to retake it a 3rd time, that is your 3rd attempt. So you will have used up your attempts when you're retaking just sections. I hope that answers the question.
Catherine, we have another question.
Yes.
Do you get breaks within the time, or is it work until you are done?
Okay, and I am going to talk about where the natural breaks should come. So if you allow me to kind of work through the rest of it, I will talk about that because that is important. So as a matter of fact, here we are now. The time allotted for the different subject areas. So in reading, you are going to be given 53 questions. The test site is going to actually randomly score 47 of the items, okay? You are going to be given 64 minutes to complete that section. Sarah, do we have someone waiting to get in?
I just let them in.
Okay. Then in math, you're going to be given 36 questions. Randomly scored will be 32. And there's 54 minutes. So you can see that there's not a ton of time to answer questions. So you're really looking at about a minute and a half to answer, to spend on questions. At the end of the time, you are looking at about 4 hours worth of time. So to the question, are there breaks? You can take breaks. However, you must wait, or you should wait, until after you've completed a section. So if you're working on reading and you need to take a break, wait till after you've completed the reading section. If you get up in the middle of a section and take the break, the time keeps running. So once you start a section, the time is going to continue. So you want to make sure that you only stop or take a break when you are finished a section and before you move on to the next section. I hope that answered the question. Now there's different scores for different programs. So these are percentages that you are scoring. So reading for RNs is 69%, practical nurses 54.8%, and Rad Tech students 60%. Again, students tend to do pretty well in math and science because that's the coursework you're most concerned about and the coursework that you spend more time paying attention to. But as you can see, the reading and English have some pretty high percentages, so you do have to pay attention to those subject areas. And also, all of the documents and forms I'm showing you today, I am going to email to you, so you will have this for future reference. So you are going to be given your results immediately if you are taking the exam at Mount Wachusett. You're going to be given a score sheet that shows your adjusted individual score. That's the one we care about because that's the one that's going to tell you what your percentages are. The means indicates that you are being compared nationally. Who else in the country has taken this exam? So you're going to have a couple of bar graphs and charts, you know, on the results page, but really and truly the very first one, the adjusted individual score, that's what we really care about. Did you get the scores that Mount Wachusett requires? So when we get to test questions, again, these questions are based on your lifelong knowledge. The exam is computerized. And as we mentioned, it's almost 4 hours in length, and it is multiple choice where you will be given an option of 4 possible answers. You are not allowed to have a personal calculator. There is a calculator embedded into the exam. Your answers can be changed until your time runs out. So if you're in reading and it's 64 minutes, at the 64th minute and it's over, you can't go back. But you can, while you're in the 64 minutes, move back and forth to go back to questions you may have left blank. Which brings us to answer everything, because blanks are scored as incorrect. So you need to go ahead and take a guess if it's something that you are not familiar with. And I'll talk about educated guesses. Again, you've got a minute minute and a half to answer questions. And so when we start talking about practicing your study sessions, you should be trying some timed study sessions so that you put yourself under that pressure to answer questions quickly. And I'll talk about that a little bit. So these are tips from a TEAS test taker, another student who took this exam. You will have a timer that will display on the top of the screen. This has freaked some students out, making them even more nervous. So you should be able to minimize the timer so that it's not kind of in your face. Your previous and next buttons allow you to go back to previous questions or to move forward to questions. And as we said, take the break after you've completed a section and before you start the next section. Students leave the test early for a variety of reasons. The recommendation is use the full test time. Remember, you've invested a lot of time getting ready for this exam. You've spent some money to take the exam, so make sure you take your time and that you use the full test time. And that means making sure that you don't have anything on your plate for that day where you have to, potentially rush out and get somewhere. Okay, so now we come to the point of when to start preparing, how to prepare. So this was my clever attempt at some healthcare humor with take the blood type approach, be positive. So pay attention to how you are talking about this exam. So, because remember, no one's making you take the TEAS. You're taking the TEAS because you have a goal. And this exam is helping you reach that goal. When we take the negative blood type approach, I have to take the TEAS. It kind of gives off this vibe that I have to and I don't want to. So let's go with a more positive approach that this is your entry into nursing or to Rad Tech. In this approach, you want to be your own professor. You are in charge of you. So you want to make sure you are creating a class schedule that's your TEAS schedule, and that again, you will commit to it. So think about, I will take the TEAS by, and come up with a date. That gives you the opportunity to work backwards on when you should be starting your study sessions. Take a review course if they are available. Oftentimes Mount Wachusett during the summer will offer either an on-campus group of workshops or online. Once we hear if there's something like that being offered, we will be making sure to let students know about it. Commit to specific days and times. Again, you are the professor of your TEAS course, so commit to days and times that will work for you, that you know that you can keep. Commitment on this is extremely important. Again, you are in charge of this particular scheduling and activity. Be specific on what you are going to accomplish during your study sessions. So if you're going to do 50 science questions, commit to that. Commit to when your breaks are going to occur. The more specific you can be, the more likely you are to stick to a study schedule. Unfortunately, a lot of students get to the TEAS and they have good intentions. So week 1 goes by, week 2 goes by, 3, 4, and they haven't done anything yet. And the next thing they know, it's a week before the exam. So this is something that should not be put off. It stresses you out more when you know then I've only got a week to get ready. So prepare as if you were a marathon runner. This is a 6 to 8 week activity for most of you. So warm up with making sure you're preparing 2 hours at a time. Take some breaks after the 2-hour period. Get to week 3 and 4, 2 more hours or 2 hours at a time, and then make the breaks a little bit less. So just do 10-minute breaks. Weeks 5 and 6, 3 hours. Start studying 3 hours. Let's build up to being ready for that 4-hour benchmark that's required. When you get to week 6 and beyond, you should be trying to sit for the 4-hour period without any breaks. Practically, you know, it may not sound probable or feasible, but in theory, it looks good. If your exam is at 8:30 in the morning, you should be practicing studying and preparing at 8:30 in the morning. You want to make sure that you mimic as many of the test conditions as you possibly can. So and if 8:30 to 12:30 is not your peak performance hours, but that's when the exam is, you need to practice making 8:30 to 12:30 your peak performance. And again, please jump in there if you have questions. So when you start the review during weeks 1 and 2, review all of the subjects. At this point, you're trying to determine where am I strong and where am I weakest. That gives you an idea of how to prepare your study schedule. You know, how many days or weeks do you want to spend on reading? How many days, weeks, how much time do you want to spend on, you know, biology? So you want to make sure that you understand where you need to spend your time. Having your own study space with all your TEAS materials is a great idea. That way you're not looking for things. If you are on a specific class schedule in the spring, ask your family employer if you can stick to that class schedule and use that as your time to study. A specific schedule goes a long way if you stick to it. Again, take a prep course if those become available. Tailor your sessions to fit your needs and learning style. So, you know, if you are someone who is a hands-on learner, what are some of those kinesthetic hands-on activities that will help you work with that information that you're learning? And if you don't remember your 4th grade reading information, teach someone. 90% of information that you teach can be retained, and that studies have proven that teaching is a better learning tool than if you read, listen, or write. So teaching, tell someone else what you're learning. And if you have kids, this is even better. You can help them with their reading or their math and reinforce the information for yourself. As you get, this is more for as you get closer to the exam. And this came actually from facilitators for the NCLEX, and that's the licensing exam for nursing students. Their recommendation is for big exams, do not increase your caffeine, sugar, alcohol, or tobacco. So don't increase, but also don't stop. So during that 6 to 8 weeks that you're studying and getting ready, that might not be the time to stop smoking. Now that's a strange thing to say because we encourage no smoking just for your overall health. But if it's something that would create more stress and anxiety, consult with a physician to determine what would be in your best interest. stay hydrated, eat well, and get some sleep. Healthcare students are the worst people for getting adequate sleep. You may not want to be putting anything extra on your plate for that 6 to 8 weeks. So it may not be a good time, you know, to get married. We had students getting married during the TEAS. So make sure that everything is planned and doesn't add any extra stress to your life. This is the hard one for students: practicing, relaxing, and meditating. So bringing yourself back to some kind of center when you feel yourself starting to feel the pressure or the anxiety of taking an exam such as the TEAS. This is not something you can just sit down one time and do. I was talking with a student the other day, and I talked about, you know, the initial meditation, and that most of us are probably thinking, how long has it been? Oh, it's only been a minute. Oh, how do I stop these other thoughts from coming through my head? So this is something that really takes time, and you're not going to be able to do it without some practice. So when you are studying, you want to mimic the test conditions. So you should try sitting in a chair. You are going to be sitting in a chair at the college, or if you are doing an online exam. So you want to make sure that you are preparing your body as well as your mind for what the test is going to actually feel like. You are not allowed to have electronics at the exam, so get them out of your sight. When you are at the college, they are going to have you put your electronics in a locker. You're not allowed to eat, drink, or smoke at the exam, so while you're practicing your study sessions, don't do any of these things. You are not going to have people talking to you, so tell people I'm studying, ask them not to bother you. If you take this exam online, one of the requirements is that you are in a room alone, so you cannot have other people around you. So make sure, again, you are getting yourself ready and prepared for that type of environment. Most students don't do well with listening to music, but if you are someone who can have music in the background and it doesn't impact you on the day that you're taking the exam, then go for it. But if you are someone who, for who the music is soothing for you while you're studying, if you go to the exam and you don't have the music, will you feel soothed, or is it going to feel like something's missing? So you got to play that one by ear, no pun intended, Sarah. But make sure you understand what works for you in regards to background noise. Use a timer. So start practicing answering questions within that minute and a half. So before the exam, you want to try to eat nutritiously. So don't eat late at night. Try to not have it be junk food. You know, get some brain food in your body. You know, make sure that you are giving yourself the best chance for alertness. Same thing with sleeping. I know it's hard to get 7 to 8 hours, but if you can get more, like 6 to 8, and do that several nights or before the exam, again, you want to be clear-headed. Exercise is great for helping us stay focused, and also for the energy. Alcohol, try to avoid it. It's sometimes when you get to a certain age, the alcohol is really a big hurt. It's a deterrent and is not helpful. So the recommendation is, you know, no alcohol the days before. And then the night before, just don't study. What you have learned and absorbed, it's now yours. Take some time to do something nice for yourself. And then check your blood type. Are you B positive? Are you envisioning your own success? If you are working your classes the way you should be studying and earning grades for your classes, you should be fine with this exam. On the day of the test, you are going to want to set 2 alarm clocks, particularly if you are doing a morning session. Remember, there are no refunds. If you arrive late, you may or may not be allowed to start the exam. Same thing with transportation or with childcare plans. Have a backup just in case something happens, your vehicle doesn't start, maybe your childcare provider fell through. Have a backup just in case. Be prepared to stay for at least the 3+ hours. I always suggest that if you have a particular type of constitution, make sure that you have prepared yourself and your body for getting to the exam and being able to stay there without interruption. We don't know if the room will be too hot, too cold, so make sure you dress in some layers, things you can put on, take off. You don't want to be uncomfortable while you're in a test situation. You must have a valid picture ID. So if you are going to the campus, make sure you've got something that shows who you are. If you are going to be online, you must log in from your Mount Wachusett account, your email address. You want to arrive at least 15 minutes before the test time. If anyone has heard of white coat syndrome, you know that that is the whole issue with blood pressure rising when we're rushing into a situation. That heightened blood pressure can give some anxiety. And so if you're like me and you go to the doctor and you are rushing in and you're convinced, oh my goodness, I've got, you know, a brain tumor, and so now the blood pressure is up and it's not looking good, and the doctor wants to give you medications and do this and do that. So you want to avoid having any of that that creates extra that's unneeded. So if you are doing the online testing, it has to be on a computer or a laptop. It cannot be on a telephone. You have to be on camera, you have to be on mic, and you have to be in a room alone. Now, ATI does lay out what the requirements are for your technical equipment, and so I have provided a link for reading all of the requirements for an online exam. On the Gardner campus, you will get your test results immediately. Again, you're not allowed to have electronics or paper, and I just keep saying the B positive. If you need to sit back and close your eyes for a minute, do that. If you can smile, and they say that fake smiling is just as effective as genuine smiling. So it's not going to cost you anything to do a fake smile and see if you can bring yourself to some kind of relaxation. All right, any questions before I move on to understanding the parts of a multiple choice exam? Okay, so there are 3 parts. Part number 1 is called the background statement. It provides the scenario. and the necessary information that you need in order to answer the question. The question is actually the STEM. What is the specific problem you are being asked to address? And then lastly, we have our possible answers for each of the questions. You don't want to read anything into the questions, okay? Only work with what the question is providing you. When in doubt, use the process of elimination, the 50-50. So get rid of two and then don't go back to them. Only deal with the two choices that you determine might be the right possible answers. With multiple choice, attempt to answer the question before you look at the options. The reason being, if you are able to come up with an answer to the question and then you see the answer within the choices, that might just well be enough. You can then move on. Sometimes what happens when we start looking at the possible choices is we start to self-doubt. We start to question, oh, well, that A could be good too. Oh, but C also looks pretty good. So a minute and a half is what you have for the questions. So if you can answer before you ever look at the possible answers, that may save you some time, but it also may stop that self-doubt from creeping in. Very quickly, you will take time to identify the rationale for both the correct and incorrect answers. So you only want to change an answer if you can justify the reason why you're doing it. You don't want to change an answer if you are guessing or if it just feels like in your gut. You want to have a rationale. This is all about critical thinking. And so your critical thinking should take over for exams like this, not your gut and not hunches. If you must guess, and we don't encourage guessing for all of the questions, obviously, but if you must guess, you're looking for keywords as clues. So is there some keyword in the answers that seems to reflect back on the problem or the specifics that were initially presented? Are there some priority words that indicate best, first, initial? Those might then indicate that the answer is within that particular statement. If you have absolute words, those things that just are definite, always, never, every, none, those tend to be false. Those tend to be false. Often, seldom, some, many, those tend to be true. So again, you only want to use these systems when you're guessing on the occasional question here and there. Answers with the most detail tend to be correct. If there are answers that are similar, one of them is likely to be the correct answer. Then there's this category, I don't think I have it here, called the odd man out. And that means that there is one answer that is completely different than the other three. Oftentimes, the odd man out is the correct answer. Okay, so during the exam, you want to listen to or read all of the instructions. Not reading the full instructions can result in errors. And so it's important to make sure that you are understanding what you're being asked to do. I've talked about answering questions before you look at your options, process of elimination. if you are on campus, pay no attention to the other students in the room. They may not be taking the TEAS. They may be taking some other exam. So if 2 hours in, you see someone get up and walk out of the room, that's not to say that they're taking the same exam that you're taking. Students have been bothered by that. And so I do encourage you, it doesn't matter what anyone else is doing. This is your exam, and you have to focus on only what you're doing, not others. It's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be confident. You don't want to become too cocky about the exam. So you got to kind of put those things in perspective and you know, make sure that you are approaching the exam with enough seriousness to do well, and not assume that you're going to do, you know, 100%. And again, I repeat, if you need a break, you wait until you've completed a section. Okay, so I do have some sample questions, and we may not be able to do those within the time frame that we have. But if I just kind of read to you the very first one, and I'm just going to ask you a couple of basic questions before we ever look at this. A blogger has just tried a new allergy medication called Allergon and is reviewing it based on his personal experiences. Identify which statements contain only facts without a trace of the blogger's opinions. So, and when I offer this example to students when we're in person together, I will get 4 different answers as to which one is the correct answer. When we read the question, there are 2 vocabulary words that we need to understand. We need to understand the difference between a fact and an opinion before we even approach the possible answers. So in this case, you would not be able to answer the question first. You'd have to look at the options. So understanding the difference between facts and opinions is what is going to help solve this particular question. And again, I'm sending this to you. Math. Now this one, you could do the math before you look at the possible answers. So the enrollment at a college went up from 625 to 710 students over a period of 1 year. Which of the following is the percent of increase to the nearest 1/10 of a percent? So if you've been paying attention to math class, you would want to use the embedded calculator, calculate this, and then look to see if your answer is part of the options. And again, I do this workshop and I will get 4 different answers. So depending on how strong your math skills are with this kind of math problem, will determine whether or not, you know, you've hit the nail on the head for that. Science. What kind of immunity is produced by a vaccine? And then we have our 4 examples. You could potentially answer this one before you look at the options, but the vocabulary you need to understand: immunity, you need to know vaccine, you need to know the difference between natural and artificial, passive and active. So there's a lot of vocabulary in this one to understand, and hopefully as you've worked through your biology classes, you've learned some of this or all of it. English and language usage. So in this case, we are given a sample sentence and we've been asked to make change it from active voice, or rather from passive voice to active voice. So that's one of those things from studying that you need to be aware of. Voice, active versus passive. so that as you're reading through the sample answers here, you know which is active, which is passive. So there are some reasons students don't pass this exam. Anxiety has always been at the top of the list. Second is, and I didn't put these in order, but second is not taking the reading and language usage as seriously as the math and science. So those tend to be the top two. I have, however, had students say they were too tired to stay for 4 hours, and I have had a student say hunger was an issue and left the exam before it was over. Unfortunately, there are students who don't prepare adequately or who register at the very last minute. You know, it's just not in someone's interest to spend $107 and then not be prepared. Now, there are some resources that we suggest you use. ATI testing, which is the test proctor. They will also try to sell you some materials. So make sure you decide, do you want to purchase materials, or are you trying to make use of some things that are at no cost or low cost? Test Prep Preview is a website that has tests on a variety of subjects, including the TEAS. There are a number of study manuals out there, anywhere from $30 to $50. Some are better than others. Make sure if you are making a purchase that you take a look at the insides of it if you possibly can. ATI does have its own TEAS manual. Gotta tell you, a number of students are not big fans of the ATI manual. So students have indeed found other study manuals that they've preferred. iTunes used to have a prep app. I'm not sure that they still have it, but the students in the past who had used it said they thought it was great. So they really enjoyed being able to have some that app available on them whenever they had a few minutes here and there. And then our own testing services found these particular sources. There is an app for a smartphone that is ATI based. And Mometrics and Union Test Prep also offer free practice tests. So you get a chance to be on the computer doing some practice tests, giving yourself a little bit more of that pressure of experiencing what the test would be like. And as I mentioned, oftentimes Mount Wachusett will offer some workshops in the summer. If we learn about those, we will definitely make sure to get back to you to let you know about it. And this concludes the presentation at this point. I do want to share with you, oops. I am going to send the instructions for registering. I'm also going to send you a page that resembles what the results sheet will look like. So at this point, we are at about the 1:30 point. And again, so I'm going to send you some materials. I appreciate you coming to the workshop. And I'm also going to ask you to do a little evaluation for us that will be part of the email that I send you a little bit later today. So we do have time for some questions if people are interested in some additional information I can share with you right now. No one? Okay, well, thank you so much. The person who is on the phone, I would like to find out who that is.
I think they just logged off when you said we were all done.
Yeah, I would like to just be able to give them credit for attendance.
Absolutely. All right, let's stop recording.